have listened how the different context of children is necessary to be understood by teachers. The growing up context of children is different. We have seen how the context of disadvantaged children affect their learning process and how the school can intervene appropriately in such cases. In today's video, we are going to discuss growing up as a girl, implications for teachers. You might be thinking why we are focusing upon girls. Girls' education is giving importance nowadays. If we teach a family that the girls can teach later on a nation itself. In this video, we will discuss the following things: growing up as a girl in the Indian context, influence of school in gender socialization and role of the teacher, difference between growing up in cities and rural areas, difference in teaching learning process, girl in a tribal community, barriers to her schooling, vulnerabilities faced by girls growing up in slums, then provisions of social security for girls, schemes by government, teacher as a change agent. These are the focus of today's video, and for this discussion we have with us our experts Dr. Letha Mohan and Dr. Deepthi Srivastava. Welcome both of you to this session. Let I introduce our distinguished experts. Dr. Letha Mohan presently is the Chief Consultant for Samagra Shiksha Scheme of Department of School of Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education. Her career spans extended for more than 3 decades as an assistant professor and associate professor in GGSIPU affiliated colleges and as guest faculty at Jamia Millia Islamia. She worked as an academic coordinator Rainbow Homes Center for Equity Studies. She is associated at Center for Early Childhood Development, Ambedkar University. She is the recipient of Adarsh Vidyalaya Award for contribution in research, and she had many publications to her credit. And we know that more than that, she is currently working under this Samagra Shiksha scheme, which provides technical and operational support to states and union territories with respect to quality compensation in government schools. Now over to Deepthi Srivastava. She did her doctoral research on children's negotiation of difference and building a culturally responsive education for the disadvantaged children. She worked in several NGOs before being closely involved with the Center for Equity Studies and its Rainbow Homes program. She was a university teaching assistant at CIA Delhi University for 4 years. She worked as an assistant professor at a B.Ed college affiliated to GGSIPU. With IGNOU Pahal, she is the research lead. She has been involved in statewide projects in Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan in teacher professional development. She was part of the team that made Adarsh Shila, a foundational learning teacher manual for SSA UP. She has conducted large-scale research and looked at the systemic approach to capacity building of teachers. Recently, she was involved in developing test items for FLN NAS 2021. Welcome to both of you. And as I stated in the introductory part, that growing up as a girl has to face a lot of challenges. What does growing up as a girl mean in the Indian context? Dr. Letha, could you please?
Thank you, Dr. Elizabeth, for giving us this opportunity to interact. And a topic which is very close to my heart, that is of girls and their education.
Yes.
Now, you asked me, what is it to be growing up as a girl, and especially in the Indian context. And the first picture that comes to my mind is of a young adolescent teenager who is in the transition stage. She is one step ahead of childhood and one step behind adulthood. And she often asks herself, who am I? Am I a child or am I an adult? Very often my parents and elders, they say, come on, don't be childish, don't be silly. Why don't you grow up? And at other times, when she tries to enter into an adult conversation, they tell her, no, this is not for you. You are so young. Now don't get into such discussion. So the child often wonders, who am I? And this role confusion is not just for girls, I am saying. It is for boys also. But the girls in the Indian context face a load of problems more. You may ask me why. We are aware that our society is a patriarchal one, where there is male dominance and where there is, subjugation of women and girls in general.
Yes.
So along with that patriarchal attitude, the family environment, the attitude towards the education of girl, these are a major challenge to the girl. And along with that, we have discrimination, we have inequality, we have domestic violence, and all these lead these girls to anxiety and depression. We have come a long way thanks to the various measures of the government, but still, the growing up, as you see, is not just getting taller or growing out of shoes, I must say. It comes with a lot of other challenges, especially the joys and challenges of growing up. But very often these girls are denied their pleasures or the time to enjoy the space altogether. So we have a load of challenges, as I said earlier, but it is not unsurmountable, I must say.
Yes, correctly Dr. Letha has stated about the context of growing up situation of a girl, especially in Indian context. Then we may say that school is an agency of socialization where teacher plays an important role. Dr. Deepthi, could you elaborate on this? What is the role of teacher in socializing the girls in that growing up stage?
Yeah, sure. And if you remember, Dr. Elizabeth, in our last session, we had talked about agencies of socialization.
Yes.
Where school becomes the main space for secondary socialization of children, all children. Because after home, this is the first place where they spend most of their times of the day. Yes. So school as an agency of socialization is definitely very important. Within the school, there are certain routines and cultures that we are following. Starting from the very moment the child enters the school, during the assembly, what kinds of lines are we making? Is there a separate line for girls and boys? What kind of roles are assigned to girls and boys? In the assembly, while a school function is going on, the other chores that they do within the school, which are not educational per se. So that is important. And herein, teacher has a role in defining these roles, but not really a very strict role in that sense. But when it comes to inside the classroom, a teacher has more control there. She has more agency and autonomy to define tasks that are assigned within the classroom. So within the classroom also, when we're looking at how children are seated, how mixed groups are being made and what kind of work is being assigned to. Do we have mixed sex groups that are working together and engaging on certain concepts and working towards projects? So because those are important spaces where all these notions of gender and who can do what can be questioned. Another very important bit is the way knowledge is treated per se.
Yes.
Because if we look at mathematics, for instance, there's a lot of mathematics in the kitchen. How often is it brought into the classroom? Something like kneading a dough.
Yes.
It involves proportion of flour to water.
Yes.
If I come on to more complex problems in mathematics, I talk of there are guests at home. There are
Yes.
about 20 of them, and now you have to prepare food. So how much of what material, in what proportion, how much will you be spending on it, how much time will you take in cooking it? All that is complex mathematics that is going on. But what do we get in those sorts of problems within mathematics classroom at the elementary stage, where children are also questioning this notion of subject divisions and gender divisions? So there this becomes very important, because herein within the classroom space and within talking to each other space is where questioning of confining roles, confining roles for both genders.
Yes.
Boys are expected to behave in a certain way, while
Certainly.
girls are
Yes.
expected to do something else. And so that questioning of that confining roles of both the sexes can happen, and that can make it more egalitarian and equitous. So that's where teacher has a vital role.
Yes, correctly Dr. Deepthi has stated the vital role of a teacher. And we know that growing up in cities is much different from growing up in rural areas. Whether it affects the teaching learning process, whether there will be a difference teaching learning process to be adopted in these two contexts. Dr. Letha, would you please explain?
Yeah. As we said earlier, growing up, as we said, it is very challenging for the girls, whether it's in rural or urban, is not dissimilar in that respect. However, the environment in the family, the society, all this matters to a child who is growing in the urban as well as in the rural. When we take the urban perspective, the girls' children in the urban, they have more access to school, more access to good infrastructure, and there are schools where they can easily get into, and in schools also they have segregated toilet and other amenities. And of course, and at home also, they may not be the first generation learners. So they have that added advantages of being in an urban society. But whereas when we look at the rural background, there is hardly access to school. Children may have to walk a long way to reach school, and of course the transport is a problem. And then the getting into school itself, age-appropriate classes also very difficult. And in schools we don't have good library, good sports equipment and other facilities, toilet, and you see there is a dropout rate, though we have come long way in the improving the enrollment rate. If you see, the dropout rate is more in urban.
Yes.
This is the main aspect, and I must definitely mention we are talking about teaching learning process. Teachers' role is very important, but the attitude of teachers in rural is again a question, and they are not themselves motivated.
Yes.
So how do they motivate the girls there? And they don't have the right training, the competencies and the skills, for teaching these girls and giving them, the right attitude in them and life skill. This is again very, very important for a growing up girl. So all these, they don't have good exposure to vocational skills. So these matters in the teaching learning process. In the urban, of course, it comes with its own problem.
Yes.
Like, cyber security, girls, discrimination again seen in urban. We may think that it is only in rural, but in urban cities also we see lot many cases of violence and discrimination. So teaching learning has to be, it has to undergo, the pedagogy has to undergo tremendous changes so that we can bring in what we, aspire for. A common platform for the girls.
Yes. Tribal communities are structurally different. How is a girl child raised in such a community? Dr. Deepthi, could you please elaborate on This
Yes, sure. Now, tribal community, when we speak the term, we tend to think of a certain kind of community. But even this, as studies show over the years, the tribal nature, the structure of tribal community itself has undergone
Yes.
some transition. For example, if I talk of Census of India 2011, we had around 10 crores tribal population belonging to 705 ethnic groups. That's a lot. And around 83% of them are largely concentrated in 10 states.
okay.
And the other interesting bit is that these 10 states that we are talking of, like Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat, and Rajasthan, these are the states that are at the lower end of the spectrum of literacy rates.
Okay.
So, connecting all this bit, there is an issue in states where tribal population is large, and there is an issue of literacy rates. So, there is some problem there. Now, what is it? First of all, when we look at the tribal community, it is not one homogenized community per se. There are divisions even here. So there are some of them which are like isolated and with thick kinship ties,
Okay.
and some of them have transitioned from a more rural or a forest dwelling settlement to a urban and labor kind of settlement because of displacements. So now the variation is that for those who are in isolated kinship kind of community, which is also matrilineal, for example, Khasi tribes of Meghalaya.
Okay.
So the growing up of a girl is extremely different there. So what happens there is, because the land ownership is handed down from the mother to the daughter, so there is a different kind of respect for the girls. The girls are given more independence. They are not burdened by that sense of body consciousness that usually happens when girls are growing up as teens and adolescents. And there are lesser number of restrictions imposed to the girls. Whereas when we come to tribes such as those tribes, for example, if I say very particularly like Mayurbhanj in Odisha,
Okay.
so therein a lot many girls are engaged in formal labor alongside the parents because there is abject poverty there. Therein the parents tend to send in boys more often to schools wherever possible rather than the girls. So tribal community per se has to be reached at and is at the lower end of the spectrum when we talk of enrollments and continuity of schools. Added to this is also poverty. So therefore growing up in a tribal community has a range from being able to grow into independence, closer kinship ties and all of that. But also at the other range is a tribal community girl where she has to struggle for her own existence along with her family.
Okay, Dr. Deepthi has rightly narrated about the situation, the context where the tribal girl is growing up. Dr. Letha, do you perceive any barriers to education for tribal girls?
Yeah, we just saw that the tribal community, most of them is in isolation, cut off from the urban society. So of course it comes with a lot of challenges and barriers to the young girls growing there. Now if we try to categorize these barriers, we can club it under three heads, like social barriers. Now what are these social barriers? As we saw, there is the environment at home, the community, where there are very rigorous, control over these girls, and mostly they are engaged in, household chores, and sometimes they are ushered into occupation at a very, very young age. So these restrictions are, tightening upon them. When we talk of pedagogical practices, though they may come to school, there again there are a lot of challenges. As we saw, teachers' attitude. Many teachers may not be even familiar with the tribal language, so the medium of instruction may not match with what they are using at home, their mother home language. So this is a very, very big gap in the learning process. And of course the amenities there, the lack of facilities in school, all this will come under the pedagogy. The medium of instruction, as I said, is a very, very serious issue with them. And coming to policy, there are so many policies that have been brought up by the government for improving the situation. But still, we have this coping up with the problem of multilingualism. In tribal itself, there are so many small dialects which are used, and the children are not familiar with the other languages. So multilingualism, the medium of instruction, the policy perspective, all these are very crucial, and it comes as a barrier for them. But I am glad to share that our new policy, NEP, has laid a lot of focus on this, removing these barriers and bringing these tribal to the forefront, especially the language, the art, the culture, all these are given tremendous importance in the present day.
Rightly, Dr. Letha has stated that the changes that brought through NEP 2020 education policy. There we are emphasizing the home language, where the tribal or any children from any context can understand and follow what is taking place in teaching learning process. Dr. Deepthi, what additional vulnerabilities do girls living in slums face? What can be done to support their school?
Yes, that is another very important group that tends to be left out when we talk of the spectrum of schooling. So now what happens is, when you look at slums, these are vulnerable spaces itself.
Yes.
They are so constrained, they are so precarious for that matter, because slums, the house that they live inside is also very, very constraining and small, and the family sizes are large. So that being the matter, and you are a girl, now you are expected to do household chores, you are expected to take care of the young, and you have to save yourself, your dignity as a girl. So then you have certain set of behaviors that you are supposed to follow. You cannot go out of your house freely and roam around in the alleyways that are part of the slum. You cannot do that, because again, exposure to drugs, exposure to people who are not socially the norm,
and sexually abuse, that is also taking.
So you are exposed to all that sexual abuse and remarks and all the kind of people that stay in the slums. So now, being a girl, you have to restrain yourself to being inside the house more than being outside that confined space itself. Now what happens is, to be in school is like a freedom from that constraining space, and in going into a space where you can talk what you feel, you can walk the way you want to, and you can also aspire for things that are different and which are beyond your otherwise scope of thinking. Now what was happening before Dr. Elizabeth was that when you talk to parents, they would not send their girls to school because they did not know the admission process itself. They did not know which time of the year can I get my children admitted to. But with the coming of the RTE Act, things changed. The SSA took up the responsibility of mapping of the nearby neighborhoods where children were identified, and children from the slums got enrolled into schools. There was no documentation required for getting admitted at any time of the year. So school took on all that responsibility, and now when they started coming into schools and with the teacher, now here the girls got a purpose. They could now say, I'm not going to stay at home and do this because I have to study. The girls and all the children had a rhythm of discipline. I have to pack my bag, I have to pack my lunch, and I have to go to school, I have to come back and do my homework. So that built aspirations. And within the classroom also, discussions that the teacher engaged with and that exposure to education that they got built on aspirations.
Dr. Deepthi has stated how the girls got a voice through the various RT Act and some kind of efforts. We have come a long way in educating the girl child by offering her social security. Can you enumerate on the efforts made so far, Dr. Letha?
Yeah, as you rightly said, we have come a long way, and Dr. Deepthi has also mentioned that enrollment rate is increased thanks to various schemes. So I'm again glad to share that the enrollment rate is now much more than what it was before, and gender parity is also established, and we have various schemes and to promote girl education.
Yes.
Now you see, quality education will happen only when we focus on two things. One is that teacher and the equity portion. So the teacher's role is very pivotal, and along with that, provision of equitable measures to girls. So if I have to cite, I must congratulate the all government for introducing so many schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, must have been familiar, Aavo Padhe Chale, then Padhna Likhna Seekho, Balika Samriddhi scheme is there, Suraksha Samriddhi scheme, and Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Rashtriya Aavishkar Abhiyan, Rashtriya Madhyamik Vidya Abhiyan. All this came with a focus on promoting girls' education and girls' welfare. And there is convergence with many other governments like women and child development, all this. So we are working together to bring reforms in it. And under Samagra Shiksha, I can go on narrating many schemes like free textbooks, free uniform, and distribution of napkin, provision of transport to girls, and then counseling for guidance, and counseling for adolescent defense training. We are providing even funding the states for giving that type of education, and exposure to vocational education, and above all we have the Nishtha, the training program for teachers, wherein this part is considerably used for training teachers to look at children equally.
And uplifting the position of
very
girls.
much. And we, as I said, we have come a very long way, but miles to go before we can be complacent and say yes, this is it.
Okay. Teacher is considered as an agent of change. How can he or she contribute in reimagining a better future for girls in our country? What's your opinion, Dr. Deepthi?
Okay. Yeah, in my opinion, Dr. Elizabeth, yes, teacher has the most critical and most important role, because teacher not only gives opportunity but generates conditions for success for the children. Now, studies have repeatedly shown that schools where teaching standards are better and schools where teacher-parent rapport is better are the schools where more number of children and girls continue their education. So now that points to how important the role of a teacher is. Now, in this discussion, we've said it before, and I will repeat it here, that there are unequal gender relations in the society. There are norms of behavior that girls and boys are expected to practice, but it is within the classroom that teacher is making this social change, where she is also generating relationships that oppose stunting of development of all children. So she is liberating all of them to develop their potential to the fullest and to question the gender norms, question inequality, and also be the torchbearers of the change of the society.
Okay, we have seen how the teacher can uplift the status of girls and make them motivated and empowered. So through this video, you have watched that how we can, as a girl, what are the situations and the difficulties they are facing, how the school and the teacher can uplift the position of girls.